Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another BRAP. It is December the 28th, 2025. Happy holidays, everyone. Hope everyone had a great holidays and a Merry Christmas. And look, I was planning on taking the week off, not doing any podcasts this week. I'm actually off the entire, uh, pretty much the entire holiday. Off next week. Off this week, this coming week as well. As we roll into the new year, won't go back to work until January the 5th. But yeah, I wasn't going to do a podcast, but wanted to have this conversation again. If you see the title of the today's show is Xbox is dead again. Why all that hate? There's been quite a fury of conversation around Xbox during the holidays here on X or Twitter, as I still refer to it as. But before we get into that conversation, B Money actually might join us. He did actually reply to me on Twitter, said I might need to stop by. So hopefully B can make it. B, I don't know if you're listening, but I did DM you a link to StreamYard to hop into to the studio, to the show if you can, the virtual studio, if you will, if you're able to do that. But want to give a big shout out to everyone. Red Dead Redemption 1123, or I said Red Dead. Redemption. I'm sorry, 1123. I said Red Dead because I'm actually playing Red Dead Redemption right now on PS5 Pro. It was part of my PlayStation Plus subscription. So haven't played Red Dead Redemption in probably 14 years, 15 years, and haven't played Red Dead Redemption 2 in about 7 years. And so the Red Dead Redemption update for PS5 Pro, I mean, considering it's a a game that's about 15 years old, it actually doesn't look too bad. Obviously, the character models, the hair textures, the facial animation. I mean, clearly that's dated in comparison to current generation. But that being said, I think it looks good for an older game, that's 15 years old, and I'm enjoying it. But I'll talk about it on the BRAP this week, and I think BRAP this week's probably going to be on a Tuesday. It's Wednesday. Let me just look at the calendar here. Let me see something, because I think Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Wednesday is New Year's Eve, so probably won't. I mean, I don't know. I have to see. I need to check with Logic, see what his schedule's like Wednesday. Maybe if we do a show Wednesday, it might be Red Dead Redemption 1 had better gameplay. All right. Poklamata 8748. All right. That's yeah, I gotta go back. I'm gonna go back and play Red Dead Redemption 2. Because there are things about Red Dead Redemption 2 that I think are better than Red Dead Redemption 1. Probably, I think in terms of the how they present the story, it's definitely more cinematic. I think Red Dead Redemption 2, I think it has higher production values, 2 compared to 1. But as I mentioned, I'll get into that on next week's BRAP. But do me a favor, everyone. Before we get into the topics here, I'm going to drop a link in the live chat. Please do me a favor and share the link on X, Twitter, your favorite social media platform, Facebook, wherever you hang out. Let everyone know we're live. Drop the link, please. Appreciate the support. Also, do the YouTube thing. Hit the like button if you haven't done so already. If you're new, consider subscribing. Hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. Again, want to thank everyone for watching. This is a very impromptu BRAP rant. Came across an article, Xbox era, and this morning, and then also based on some of the conversation that I had on Twitter last night around exclusives again, and Xbox, and some of the stuff I've been seeing about Xbox being dead. We're going to get into that a little bit. I know I've talked about it on this show on numerous occasions, and we've talked about the value of exclusivity and kind of this back and forth between some members of the community that think that exclusives don't matter, and others that feel like, hey, exclusives do serve or do have some sort of value. And all this is on the heels of what Sean Layden basically said recently in a video interview that he had Um, I need to pull up that interview with Sean Layden. No, I can't find it. Oh, here we go. So I'm just going to quote Sean Layden here. Um, Big shout out to Genki for posting this. Let me share the screen here real quick. Oh, let me grab this super chat here quickly by Donnell Brown, the Raiders fan. Donnell Brown with the $2 super chat says is it too early for a podcast? Go back to bed. Sir, it's not early here. It's actually 10:30 in the morning. I'm having my cup of coffee. I did sleep in a little bit this morning. I slept until about 8, quarter after 8, and stayed up a little bit late last night watching. What's up, T Rock? Happy holidays to you, sir. Stayed up watching AEW World's End pay-per-view last night. It was a decent pay-per-view. I'm not going to spoil any of the outcomes of the matches, but I enjoyed it. Thought it was a good pay-per-view. Curie86, thank you for that super chat, Donnell Brown. Curie86 says, I dislike the double standard from the Xbox camp. What double standard are you referring to? All right, let me pull up this this tweet here. All right, here we go. This is the Sean Layden quote. Big shout out to Genki for posting this. Former PlayStation boss Sean Layden says console exclusive games are still important. I don't think every game has to be console exclusives. I don't disagree with Sean there. I don't think every game needs to be console exclusives, especially when you factor in the economics, right, of a multiplayer live service games. Like clearly, it makes sense for those games to exist on multiple platforms. Single player games are a bit different. But that being said, um, I don't disagree with Sean here. He says, but I do accept the fact that if you're going to have a platform, if you're going to have platform companies like Sony and Nintendo, largely, Microsoft is more of the Xbox everywhere, anywhere. There's a huge value to the brand of having strong exclusives. So this is, I've said this, we've said this on the show before. It's only in the gaming space do we have conversations around exclusivity holding no value. You have certain folks on one side of the camp that say, oh, well, exclusives hold no value. We need to stop pretending that they do, but we don't have those conversations around exclusives and other forms of entertainment medium, like subscription services. For example, I did watch yesterday, or no, the day before, actually, on the day after Christmas, I watched season 5 of Stranger Things on Netflix, and Stranger Things is doing they're not releasing the entire season 5. They're doing like these staggered releases. So the final chapters of season 5, or the finale of season 5, is actually releasing on New Year's Day. So that's interesting. They're doing that, but we don't have these conversations around things like Stranger Things on Netflix, right? We don't have these conversations around Star Wars, Disney content, not the movies, but the offshoots of some of the Star Wars on Disney that are exclusives, right? Or some of the Marvel things that are offshoots that are exclusive to the Disney streaming platform. We don't have those conversations and say exclusives don't matter. People really don't subscribe to Netflix because of Stranger Things. But those things inherently do add value. And just because not everyone sees value in them doesn't mean they hold no value. And to assume or to say things that like exclusives hold no value, that's very disingenuous. It's not net zero, right? It isn't. Could it arguably be made that clearly 100% of all consumers aren't buying Nintendo Switch? Well, maybe Nintendo Switch, but clearly no one but clearly, the argument can be made that the argument could be made that, yeah, 100% of consumers aren't buying a PlayStation 5 or Xbox or Nintendo Switch for solely for its exclusives, right? But that doesn't mean those exclusives don't hold value, that they don't provide value for a subset of consumers. They clearly do. For many generations, and even this current generation, I've owned multiple platforms. I actually um, don't own an Xbox console, although I'm still in the Xbox ecosystem. I subscribe through to PC Game Pass, and that's how I interact with the Xbox ecosystem. I don't personally feel the need to have an Xbox Series console. I just don't see the value in it as I have a capable PC. But at one point, I did have a Series X, and part of that was because a lot of that was nostalgia too for me, and because I'd like, um, you know, um, I've always owned an Xbox console. I mean, and this is the funny thing, and we'll talk about the Xbox hate. But many of us who are critical of Xbox, it isn't coming from a position of hate, and a lot, and we tend to, and I think people do this to kind of flatten the argument for those who are providing constructive criticism about the direction of Xbox. And some of that criticism comes from the perspective of us who were on the original Xbox, the launch of the original Xbox 20, it's going to be 25 years next year, next November, as a matter of fact. Some of us were Xbox Live beta testers. For those who don't know, I was an Xbox Live beta tester. I onboarded onto Xbox November 2001. And so a lot of my criticism comes, and if you watch the Lore 5 video, she talks a little bit about this, right? When Xbox had this identity, when it created this cutting edge hardware, but not so much that it created cutting edge hardware as much as it actually created cutting edge software, exclusive software that you could only experience on Xbox, that took advantage of said cutting edge hardware, where the development teams would code, and Sean Layden gets into this in this YouTube video, where he talks about, when you're creating multi-platform games, you need to understand that I'm paraphrasing him here, but the point that he drives home is this: is that you have to code for the lowest common denominator with multi-plat games, right? This is what the third party developers do, publishers. When you're coding for an exclusive game, you can push all the levers to 11, right? So think about a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, Sean saying 11, right? So it's beyond that, right? You can really push the limitations of the hardware. And that is where me personally, and I think others too, not everyone, finds value in exclusives. That when you buy this piece of hardware that's $500, you're going to get that ROI in first party exclusives that are really going to push the limitations of the hardware. And so a lot of us who experience the Xbox, the original Xbox, and the Xbox 360, which in my opinion is the pinnacle of the Xbox consoles, the 360 generation, many of us found value in the first party games that were releasing on the Xbox because they were taking advantage of the hardware. And it isn't so much about, I know Paris Lilly, who I very often disagree with because I just don't agree with his takes. I think he tries to flatten a lot of the nuance out of the values of exclusivity in the marketplace, and I don't think he takes it he's not a very data centric person. It's more of an emotion or this idea, I think, of, we exclusives don't hold any value. There's nothing wrong with games anywhere or everywhere. And I don't disagree with that. Games everywhere isn't necessarily a new concept per se. I mean, third party publishers put their games everywhere, right? So in that regard, that idea isn't necessarily new, but it is new for a platform owner like an Xbox, to kind of say, hey, you don't need, while we still make hardware, you don't need to buy our hardware to play our games. We're going to put our games everywhere. So just to add a little bit of nuance there, but T-Rock says Xbox as a console is being phased out by Xbox themselves. If you can't see that, I have some beachfront property in Montana to sell you. Man, that's funny, T-Rock. But no, I mean, but to your point, T-Rock, I mean, that is that goes back to the Xbox dead commentary that we see out on social media, and on different podcasts, and we'll get into that here in a second. But some of the criticism that many of us have comes from that perspective of being consumers inside the Xbox ecosystem. So for myself as an example, I've been an Xbox consumer for 24 years, going on 25. I don't own a console, but I'm still in their ecosystem. I subscribe to Game Pass PC. I still play their games. You even heard me on this show that I thought that for Game Pass, this was the best year in Game Pass in terms of Microsoft Studio or Xbox Studio releases, and even some of the third party content that released into Game Pass this year. If you think about Claire Expedition 33, um, in my opinion, I actually look at Game Pass as the platform now, not necessarily the hardware. It's not about the console. It's about, the services that Microsoft provides, or Xbox in this case provides to consumers. But going back to what I was saying about the criticism, some of it's data centric, data driven. Some of it is based on our experiences, right? So please don't lump all of us into the camp that, oh, we're just hating on Xbox for the sake of hating on Xbox, and that we have no valid criticisms. That is very disingenuous. It's a method. It's a tool to flatten any nuance, flatten the conversation, and assume that all of us are acting or making arguments in bad faith. We're not. We're not doing that. Many of us are, again, from the perspective of being on the Xbox platform for 24 years, being there day one on the Xbox console, right? The original Xbox console launching in 2001 with Halo. And think about the cultural impact that Halo had, not just on the industry, but on consumers and the mindset in pop culture, right? I mean, we forget about the impact that exclusives have in that regard, right? That they can have that cultural impact, they can cross mainstream, that they can create strong brand identity, that they create value to a consumer and ROI to a consumer that has spent hundreds of dollars in buying a platform and expects to have, high end, experiences that they didn't have their previous console generation. And more often than not, those high end experiences, right? That bang for your buck, if you will, or that ROI in new hardware. Because for many years, if you think about this for just a second, historically speaking, right, when we go out and buy, $400, $500 piece of console hardware, and it's a new hardware, the expectation is this, right? The expectation has been for many years, for the 40 plus years that I've been gaming, and I often wonder if some of these folks are new to gaming, and I often wonder if some of the Xbox, not all, but if some of the Xbox gamers today are new to Xbox, meaning they didn't have that experience of peak Xbox, right? I said earlier the pinnacle of Xbox for me was the Xbox 360. Maybe they didn't have that experience, right? Of what it was like to feel that cultural impact, to feel that brand identity. It's something Logic and I have talked about quite a bit, that the Xbox 360 generation was really the pinnacle in the sense that it fostered, it created this community, this culture, if you will, inside gaming, where like it was a dude bro or aggro, console box, as Logic likes to describe it as. And it was a thing. It was kind of like this may sound crazy to some, but it was kind of, for a lot of us, it was kind of a badge of honor, if you will. Like, yeah, we have the cool console, the Xbox 360. Yeah, we have it all now. We have, shooters. We have, the Western RPGs. We have, and at that time, Microsoft did a really good job at getting more, Japanese development support on the Xbox 360. They had made some inroads during the original Xbox. But at that point, the Xbox 360 for me at least felt like a one-stop shop for everything video games, right? If you wanted your fix of great shooters, think about the cultural impact of Gears, right? Everyone talks about Mad World, right? When we first saw that intro to the introduction, that reveal of Gears of War, and we hear Mad World playing, and everyone talks about the story of Dom and Maria. I mean, those are, think about the cultural impact, the emotional impact that has on gaming, on brand, on consumers who spent their hard-earned money on a video game, and now they have the opportunity to play a game that's only on that platform. That not just that it's only on that platform, that it's creating an experience that you can't get anywhere else. There is value for consumers in that, right? Think about this for just a second. I mean, why do people subscribe to Netflix? Not everyone's subscribing to Netflix, right? For Stranger Things, but people do, because you can't have those kinds of experiences on other streaming platforms, right? Think about HBO Max, right? And HBO having Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, the Telu series, and other HBO, content that you can't get anywhere else, right? Why does HBO do that? They want to draw people to the platform. They want to create additional value prop. They want to distinguish themselves in the marketplace, and consumers see value in that. And I don't know why we argue these things that somehow the economics or just have this conversation with Logic yesterday. He's like, we're arguing against hundreds of years of capitalism where exclusivity has been a constant in a capitalist environment. And I don't disagree with him. I think that holds true today. And I don't know why we treat video games like they're any different. They're not. Again, no one's making the argument or claim that people only buy video game consoles for exclusives. But to say that exclusives have no impact in the purchasing decision of consumers is just false, right? We know that some consumers do buy video games, and people then try to minimize the impact. Again, we don't do this with Netflix. We don't do this with HBO Max. We don't try to minimize the impact of the exclusive content that those games have, or not those games, those streaming services have, right? We don't minimize the impact of a Stranger Things, right? we don't do that, but we do it in video games, and they do it in video games because they want to drive home a narrative. They want to prove that what Microsoft is doing and Xbox is doing is in fact correct, right? And the reality is this: that the pie is so big, and I've said this before on this show, and I really believe this. I don't think anyone is doing. Let me walk this back a bit. I do think that the pie is big enough, right? That the different business models that Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox have could probably thrive, right? Considering how diverse the consumer base is. And so this argument of who's doing it better is a bit, I don't know, at times I think a bit ridiculous. I think it comes down to each individual consumer to determine what ecosystem works best for them and what they see value in, right? But let's not flatten the conversation or remove any sort of nuance, right, to just drive home that point that, in fact, Xbox is doing it right and PlayStation and Nintendo are doing it wrong, and vice versa, right? Obviously, Xbox has pivoted their business model for a variety of different reasons. I often see people trying to conflate what PlayStation has done and what Xbox has done and try to conflate the idea that, or the reasons that PlayStation has opened up its ecosystem a bit, in the sense of, they're following Xbox, right? Because exclusives are dead, because you can't sell console hardware anymore. The console market shrinking. Yeah, obviously again, we don't have this argument for other mature markets, right? We don't do this for cell phones, which is a mature market. We don't do this for luxury items, which are mature markets. But we do it for video games, whatever reason. We treat video games as they're somehow different or don't follow the same rules of economics or the same, basic, the laws of economics, right? Supply and demand, like somehow the video game industry is immune to that, or that the video game industry or the console industry is unique in the sense that it oh my God, it's, console sales are down. Oh my God, it's over. We don't do this for other consumers' goods. I think what we should understand this basic thing, right? This basic principle that with all consumer products, you're always going to have ebb and flows. You're going to have ups and downs, right? Now, we can certainly have a conversation when the downs are more downs and the downs are consistent, right? Then we can certainly have that conversation. Say, oh, wait a minute, something's not right here. But that's not the case. That's never the case. So, by the way, we have like 50 people here watching. And by the way, thank you so much for joining this impromptu rant. I really appreciate it. Again, I know this is very last minute. There wasn't much notice that went out for this live stream, but I really appreciate the support. So please do me a favor, do the YouTube thing, hit the like button. If you're new, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification, so you're alerted when we go live, if you enjoy the content that you're listening to. But I do want to go back to kind of this flattening, if you will, of criticism over Xbox, that it's all fanboy hate. Some of it is, absolutely. Some of it isn't. Some of it, like, Some of it comes from people like me who, again, for those who don't know, I was an Xbox Live beta tester. And I've said this on this show many times. The disappointment, and Lauren Fry kind of talked, for those who don't know her, she used to work for Microsoft Xbox, helped launch the Xbox. For a lot of us, it was going back 24 years. It was, there was a certain, like, this sounds crazy, right? But it was almost like a badge of honor. It was a badge of honor. It was this idea that we were part of this movement, right? This cutting edge movement from Microsoft. You think about Xbox Live, and it wasn't just that it was cutting edge. They really did a good job at showing us and talking about games. If you remember Project Ego, I'll never forget the Project Ego reveal. Peter Molyneux, which eventually became Fable. And if you think about the launch of Halo, like Halo, if you're around for the launch of Halo, it gave us a glimpse, right, into what the hardware of the original Xbox was capable of. So it created that momentum, right? And this is what exclusives do early on in a console generation, right? You look at, and I thought PlayStation 5 did a much better job at exclusive launches, big AAA exclusive launches. This generation they did with the PS4. I mean, I know we had Killzone and some other games, but in my opinion, at least, I thought the PS5 launch was better than the PS4 launch in terms of exclusive content. But the launch of Halo had a cultural impact, right? It really gave us a glimpse into the potential of the original Xbox. It created excitement. And again, like you think about what Sean Layden said, right? Actually, let me finish reading this quote here. I went off on a little bit of a rant. All right, he says there's a huge value to the brand of having strong exclusives, right? If Mario, he says, if Mario starts to show up on PlayStation, that's the apocalypse, right? Cats and dogs living together. The same goes for Nathan Drake and Uncharted. I think they make the platform sing. And of course, the other things with multi-platform that I'm sure most people realize is that when you code across multiple platforms, you do have to code for the lowest common denominator. But if you do exclusives, you can push every lever to 11 in that platform. So think about that. We think about that ROI that some people want, or that ROI that people get from exclusives, right? Because first party studios can code to the metal. They could really push, as Sean is saying, those levers to 11 on that platform, right? Which we're not going to get from multi-platform releases. That's not to say that they aren't good multi-platform games. It's to say that from a technology perspective, that you're going to get those first party games really pushing the envelope of that hardware. And again, it's almost this unspoken rule, or this unspoken agreement, this acknowledgement that we have in our minds as consumers when we buy new hardware, that the expectation is we're going to get better graphics, we're going to get games that perform better, right? And we're more likely to probably get better performance, better looking games from what? Exclusive content. You look at some of the things that PlayStation did with the haptic feedback controller, right? There have been third-party studios that have implemented haptic feedback, but the first-party studios, I would argue, have done the best job of implementing and really showing you the possibilities of the haptic feedback system inside the PlayStation 5 controller, the DualSense controller. Astrobot comes to mind. You look at the use of the SSD, some of the hardware feature sets on the PlayStation 5, and the studios that have taken advantage have done a really good job of taking advantage of some of those feature sets, right? Is that very thing are the first party studios. And so people do find value in that. And to say that no one finds value in that, again, is just flat out disingenuous. It's not true. Now, yeah, there may be some people that say, you know what? Yeah, I'm not in the PlayStation ecosystem for exclusives, for the exclusive games. I prefer, Sony as a brand, or I may prefer the DualSense Edge, or things like that, or maybe this is where my friends are. But something ultimately led people to that platform, right? And I see a lot of the argument. People are saying that the argument that I saw this past weekend was, well, most people aren't buying exclusives or video game consoles for exclusives. They're buying them for, the live service stuff, the Fortnites, the Call of Duties, the multiplats. That's look at. I saw someone cherry pick the Circana data, and they didn't show the retail data, right? Which I'll get to in just a second. They didn't show the retail data. They just showed the engagement numbers for live service games. See, look, this is proof that people don't buy consoles. No, it's just showing that people are spending time. Um, it's just showing the amount of hours that people are spending in live service games on each platform, right? We also know that 40% of gamers per Circana, and this is a data point that people don't reference, that only 40% of console gamers are playing live service games, right? So, or 40% are spending their time playing live service games. So what is the other 60% doing, right? So you have 40% playing live service. So again, what are the other 60% doing? And this is Circana data, right? So let's think about that for just a second. And then the other question that I pose, well, if this is true, right? If your assumption, if you're asserting that, um, you're asserting that, excuse me, that exclusives don't matter, that exclusives aren't driving sales, and that in fact it's multiplat, it's live service games that are driving console sales, then why has the Xbox struggled to sell Xbox Series consoles this generation? And in fact, we know that per Circana data, as of March 2025 of this year, time aligned March 2025, that the Xbox Series consoles were about 20% behind the Xbox One in North America, which is Xbox's strongest market. We know that looking at Microsoft financials, and I know people like to point to quarterly numbers, right? Because someone said that to me on Twitter today. Well, what about PlayStation? They're down 40% year over year. Yeah, for a quarter, they're comparing their year over year quarter from the previous year in a previous year where they set record numbers, right? So there's a little bit of nuance there that people tend to gloss over. Um, but if they saw, right, year over year for the fiscal year 40% declines and it's consistent, yeah, then that's a different conversation. But we're not seeing that on the PlayStation side. We're not seeing that with Nintendo, right? So if the argument is that, it's multiplats, it's live service games that are pushing console sales, then why is the Xbox Series console struggling to sell in comparison to the Xbox One generation? Time aligned, why is the Xbox Series console down 20% to the Xbox One? Why are we seeing not just quarterly declines in revenue hardware per Microsoft's own financial reports? Why are we seeing fiscal year declines in hardware revenue for the Xbox Series hardware? What we do know is that the two platforms, right, that are selling well in the console space have one thing in common: exclusives. And and so I want to go back to some of the criticism that many of us have, and kind of this unspoken contract we have with hardware manufacturers. Okay, Nintendo, PlayStation, Xbox, yeah, we're gonna buy a next generation console, but the expectation is that we're gonna get better hardware, more powerful hardware, better looking games, right? Because that's the expectation, right? And so we typically get the best of that from first party exclusives. And that is the value that some consumers see with first party exclusive games when they buy new hardware. So this is why I find Paris's comment here to be disingenuous. The biggest games are everywhere, and the only thing Xbox has abandoned is the illusion that exclusivity has abandoned is the illusion that exclusivity withholding content creates value. Again, we don't have these conversations with things like Netflix, with HBO Max, right? We don't do this. And clearly, and speaking of value, right? Clearly, when people say that exclusives hold no value, if you look at the recent Circana numbers for November, look at Ghost of Yote, which is an exclusive on PlayStation 5. You look at Nintendo, which has Pokemon as an exclusive. You look at previous Nintendo exclusives that have charted Circana, right? You look at Nintendo's, look at Breath of the Wild. I think the attach rate to the Switch was like 100% or something at the time it launched. Look at Mario Kart 8, which I think sold like 60, 70 million copies. Okay. You look at Spider-Man, which is sold north of 20 million. God of War, north of 18 million. Those games have charted on Circana, right? Games that have launched on a singular platform have charted and have outsold games that are multi-plat games. So think about that for a second. If we're making the argument that consoles hold no value and that there's no demand for them, right? The Circana data paints a completely different story. And that's retail data. That gives us a glimpse into the demand and how well some of these games are selling. So it's a very disingenuous comment. You look at Ghost of Yote. Ghost of Yote is the number 10 best-selling game for the year of 2025. In 2 months, it's the number 10 best-selling game in 2025. It is outsold the majority of multi-plat releases that have been released this year. And clearly, people value exclusives, want these types of games. It's why Sony and Nintendo can continue to invest millions of dollars into development of these games. I can promise you, if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, they're not investing millions of dollars. It's why Microsoft has said, you know what? You don't need our hardware to enjoy our games anymore. Why? Because they weren't selling hardware, because the juice isn't worth the squeeze for them anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the reality of where they sit in the market and some of the challenges that they faced. The other argument I heard this week was, the challenges that Xbox face aren't uncommon. Others have faced these headwinds in the industry. Yeah, some of them have. Some of them have been similar. Some have been different challenges. But why is it that Nintendo and PlayStation, if that's the argument we're making, have fared better despite facing some of these same headwinds? And yes, some of these headwinds are unique to Xbox. And I'm not going to get into the differences because we've talked about it on this show quite a bit. But there are some differences here. There's a lot of nuance that gets pushed to the side to try to flatten the conversation and to try to just hand wave the challenges that Xbox has had. Yeah, and look, no one's saying that having access to more games is a bad thing. I mean, I have access to a lot of games inside an ecosystem right now, inside the Nintendo Switch, inside the PlayStation. I have tons of games available to me. If you value having your game library everywhere, right? Those things exist today. That's fair. But the idea that withholding content doesn't create values dimensionally false. It does hold value for a subset of consumers. Not 100% sure, but it isn't net zero either. And implying that it's net zero is fucking disingenuous. So the one thing, going back to my experience as an Xbox gamer, because I think this is important to touch upon. Um, so a lot of us get lumped into this camp of, and I said this earlier, console warring and you know hating Xbox, but no, but a lot of us too also have our criticism stems from the experience that we had during the original Xbox and Xbox 360 generation. And hell, even the early Xbox, even early on the Xbox One generation. Quantum Break, remember that game? That was great. I love Quantum Break. Rise Son of Rome, love Rise Son of Rome. You bought Rise Son of Rome, it was like this technical showcase of what the Xbox One was capable of. And I was like, and I was there for it day one, right? I wasn't thinking, oh my god, this game is locked behind Xbox. It's not fair. It doesn't give value to anyone. Rise Son of Rome being exclusive is anti-consumer, provides no value. I didn't think that. I was like, hell yeah, this game looks amazing. So, and I wonder, and it's interesting, like, at the start of the generation, people didn't have this perception of exclusives until Microsoft started telling you that exclusives don't matter. And the reason they told you that is because they were pivoting away from exclusives. It's interesting because if you look at the dynamic of Nintendo and PlayStation, you compare that, contrast that against Xbox. PlayStation isn't telling you exclusives are the end all be all, and neither is Nintendo. What they're doing is, hey, we build this box. These are the games that we have, and if you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't, you don't. Well, Microsoft is trying to dictate and tell you, hey, exclusives don't matter. That it's antiquated. Is it? Is it antiquated? Again, not saying that exclusives are the end all be all, and the sole reason why all consumers, the only reason consumers buy into a console, but it is a reason. As Logic has often said on this show, exclusives could potentially be that tiebreaker. When little Johnny walks in the store and he sees that Call of Duty's both on Xbox and PlayStation, perhaps God of War's that tiebreaker for little Johnny. Oh shit, I can play this game? Oh, this game looks incredible. Spider Man? I can only play Spider Man on PlayStation? Oh, yeah. PlayStation, it is then. And so little Johnny makes that purchase and he's getting Spider Man, he's getting God of War. He sees value in those, and he sees value in that, in those games. For little Johnny, that's justifying his purchase. That's that ROI. So there's value in that. Like, why are we arguing that point that doesn't happen? Again, no one's saying that all consumers think like that. But again, it isn't net zero. And so for a lot of us who are critical of Xbox now, some of it's based off data. actual data that we have. Some of it's based on our own experiences in the ecosystem. Where the original Xbox, they created software that took advantage of the hardware they sold me. So when Xbox said, "Hey, we have this internal hard drive in the original Xbox, it's going to allow developers to do things that you can't do on other platforms." Oh shit. Yeah, I'm down for that. And so we got the Elder Scrolls Morrowind. We got we got Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. We had all these great Western RPGs that we didn't have on consoles. And so for a lot of us that were on Xbox at the time, we're like, oh shit. Yeah, I can play. I can't get this on PlayStation. But I can get KOTOR, I can get Elder Scrolls Morrowind, I can get these different types of experiences on this one platform. I can rip music onto my hard drive and have custom soundtracks when I'm playing GTA San Andreas. Actually, that's literally why I bought GTA San Andreas on the original Xbox. I can play the definitive version of Splinter Cell. Wait, I can party chat on Xbox Live. I mean, these were tangible differences. These were exclusive feature sets you couldn't get anywhere else. And so for me, it created value in that product. When I spent that, $300 at the time, right? And this is kind of what Lower Fire talks about. Microsoft was creating these first party exclusive games, or even partnered with third party developers to create exclusive games that took advantage of the hardware. And it was awesome. We benefited from getting great gaming experiences. You back to what Sean Layden said. But if you do exclusives, you can push every lever to 11 in that platform. That's what Xbox was doing, right? That's what Halo did for us. That's what Xbox Live and the games it created for Xbox Live did. And then you fast forward to the Xbox 360. You can think about Itagaki's-san here for just a second. Rest in peace. Also, wanted to mention this early in the show. I mean, we heard about the tragic news, tragic loss of industry veteran Vince Zampello, passed away tragically in a car accident. Thoughts and prayers to his family and friends. I mean, just such a tragedy, such a profound impact on the gaming industry. We think about what he did with Call of Duty, Respawn, Titanfall, Apex Legends. Really helped Battlefield 6, right? But I want to go back to the original Xbox. So a lot of us that were early adapters of the Xbox had those experiences, right? Then you think about the announcement of Gears of War. Holy shit. You look at the Xbox 360, look at the launch of Mass Effect on the 360 as an exclusive. You look at the Xbox 360 architecture and how it was easier for developers to develop for. And often the Xbox 360 will get the best ports of third-party games. You got Fable 2, Dead Rising, Lost Odyssey. Remember Itagaki? Remember not Itagaki? So remember they had Mistwalker. I mean, you think about the 360. It was you had Elder Scrolls Oblivion as exclusive. You had Lost Odyssey. The 360 through its exclusives became a one-stop shop, if you will, for all things gaming. You had indie games like Braid, Yeah, these like deep RPGs, these like unique these unique adventure action adventure games, these thrilling shooters like Gears of War, Halo 3, the continuation of Forza, Alan Wake. So when we sit there, we talk about these platforms. We often mostly remember some of the exclusive content, some of the memorable gaming experiences that these platforms provided us. And that's what Xbox used to do. So a lot of our criticism for those that are had been in the ecosystem and have been in the ecosystem for 24 years stems from that. Where the current messaging from them doesn't really resonate for us. It doesn't mean that we hate Xbox. The benchmark for Xbox was the original Xbox and the Xbox 360, and to extent early Xbox One before they gutted that console. So for a lot of us, that's the benchmark. It's not hate. It's based on our own experiences, the time and money that we spent inside that ecosystem, and the experiences that we had. Again, is some of it console war hate? Sure. But to assume and to say that all of it is just wrong. It's not right. It's a lie. Like I don't hate Xbox. I had a lot of hopes. I had a lot of I had a lot of hope for the Xbox this generation, especially after they had invested in studios, building up their pipeline of first party studios. When they bought Bethesda, they had addressed the power narrative with the Xbox Series X. But what bothered me with the Xbox Series X is if I compare it to previous generations, right? If I go back to the original Xbox console, which was the most powerful console hardware at the time, the Xbox Series X, I didn't see a game that really spoke to that this thing eats monsters for breakfast. I had that experience on the original Xbox, which was the most powerful hardware at the time. So that's where my criticism comes from, right? Let me dumb this down a bit. You have a favorite sports team, right? And they've won, I don't know, 4 straight Super Bowls, or they won 2 straight Super Bowls. You know, they make it to the first round of the playoffs the third year. They lose, and now they have a couple losing seasons. If you're evaluating that team based on previous performance, that's not hate. That's not hate. That's you benchmarking them on where they previously were to where they are now. And that's not to say that you can't like the team still. For example, I'm critical of Xbox based on my previous 24 years of experience in the ecosystem, based on being an Xbox Live beta tester, based on seeing the cultural impact and the great exclusives they used to make, based on how they used to take advantage of the hardware that they sold me. Xbox managed to do something that at the time I didn't think was possible. They got me off the PlayStation platform. They got me off Nintendo. And it wasn't towards the latter part of last generation that I actually went back to PlayStation 4. And what drove me there was the exclusive content that was on PlayStation 4. And again, that's not to say that everyone buys, again, because I know someone's going to say, oh, well, gamers today who don't buy consoles for exclusives only or anymore. There's actually no real data that shows us, at least that I've been able to find, that gives us a percentage, an idea of the percentage of consumers that buy consoles for exclusives. I've seen surveys by the CMA. that shows 69% of consumers list exclusives as the main reason why they purchase a console. I've seen YouGov publish a survey that says 33%, about a third of consumers use exclusives as a reason to buy. No, boy, I didn't. I had a PS3, but I didn't really play it too much. So let me just clarify that. I was mostly on Xbox, like 90% of the time, and now that's not the case today. So what we have from surveys is anywhere from 33% to 70% of gamers are saying they use exclusives as the primary reason why they purchase a specific console. So I'll say this. So that's where some of the criticism comes from gamers who are critical of Xbox because of the great experiences they had on the Xbox platform and the feeling that they're not getting those experiences. The benchmark being the 360, the original Xbox, that historical reference point in performance. And look, and that's not to say that you can't enjoy the current Xbox ecosystem. No one's saying that. But again, to sit there and say that we're all haters, and some of it, yeah, some of it's console war hate, but to just flatten that argument and say it's all hate, or that it's, as Xbox Era said in their article, Xbox is dead, long live Xbox, it's the Xbox is dead is really is a conversation being had by people that have no interest or aren't even inside the Xbox ecosystem. And that's false. And let's be clear, when some people say Xbox is dead, some of it is console warring, but some of it from people like myself who have been in the Xbox ecosystem for close to a quarter century now. What we're saying is that the hardware is dead, that the Xbox console business is dead. And for, I mean, and Microsoft is telling you, some of the live chat said it earlier. Microsoft is basically telling you, don't buy our console. You don't need to. So yeah, in that regard, it's dead. They've never, in the 24-year history of Xbox, have ever suggested that you don't need an Xbox to play games from Xbox Studios. So do you understand? Like when people are saying like Xbox is dead, it's really the console hardware is dead. And look, they're putting their games everywhere. Great. I don't particularly find a lot of value in that. You know, I just don't. If you do, great. I don't. I mean, I think what they've let me walk that back. I think what I find value in is that I don't need to spend $500 on another console to enjoy Xbox games. That I can now play those games on my PlayStation 5 or Game Pass PC. So that's let me walk through. So that's the value for me. But generally speaking, like I'm not as excited about it as I would if they had first party studios that were taking advantage of the Series X hardware and pushing the limitations of creativity and what the hardware can do and what games can look like. That's what I'm excited about. But everyone's different. I'm not, and again, if you feel differently, that's fine. We say this on this show. Everyone has different individual use cases for whatever platform they choose to game on. Jay Hart with the $2 super chat says also Steam has the most exclusives, but no mention. What do you mean by Steam has the most exclusives? I'm not following you there. You mean like smaller indie games? Harris says you're in a confessional using Dallas Cowboys as an example team. Yeah, I can relate to Dallas Cowboys. I mean, look, I used the Washington Commanders as an example for years. So I'm reading the chat here. Want to increase Game Pass? They want to increase Game Pass subs, refuse to market their consoles, which would get them those subs. They shot themselves in the foot. Yeah, I mean, I don't think they got the ROI on Game Pass that they thought they would. All right, let's get B Money here. B just joined. All right, well, I want to welcome B Money. B, hey, first of all, happy holidays to you, sir. Great to have you on. For those who don't know, B Money's like an original content creator back in the day. So, B, what's going on, man? Great to see you.
Yeah, not much, man. Happy holidays to you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. I saw your post and I was like, let me see if I can hop in there for a second, man, and just kind of give my 2 cents on the subject.
Yeah, no, I mean, B, and I'm glad you're here because I think, like me, you probably share this or probably have the same perspective of Xbox, right? Because I know, like, you've been on Xbox as long as I have, and I remember you guys, the Inner Circle podcast, you guys met Phil Spencer, would go to the E3 shows, like you remember, like it was a different Xbox back then, right?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, and you remember the 360 generation. So, and I don't know how much of the show you've caught or listened to, but one of the argument that I've been making is, yeah, like some of the like people saying, oh, because I just happen to hop on Twitter this weekend for whatever reason. I try to stay off Twitter these days, but I just happen to look, and a lot of the conversation, B Money, was like, oh well, people don't buy consoles for exclusives anymore, or exclusives are less valuable, or people just hate on Xbox, and I don't disagree. Like there's some hate that's console war, but what I don't agree with is that kind of flattening of criticism of Xbox, because there's some of us that have legitimate criticism because we're not happy with where the brand has gone based on our own experiences with the original Xbox and Xbox 360.
Oh, for sure. And if people who have been around and have listened to the show for many years, they know that I've called this out many times and have talked about this years ago prior to us getting to this point. So it's not an over criticism of Xbox. It's a fair criticism because this is not the brand that we grew to know and love. You know what I mean? They've totally done a 180 and changed their business model, which is perfectly fine if that's what is going to bring in the revenue and bring in the profits for the business. But it's not what we have fell in love with. It's not the traditional console business model, and that's why people are calling it out. When you go to a console, a lot of times the reasons that you chose that console was for the exclusives, and this goes all the way back to Atari, to NES, to Sega. You know what I mean? Like, there, we have always chosen sides. There have always been a reason to choose a particular console, and that's because of the games. And when you go putting your games on every console and every screen available, then your console becomes irrelevant. You know what I mean? Because now I can access that same content somewhere else and also get exclusive games. You know what I mean? So it's a fair criticism about Xbox. It's a fair criticism about what they've been doing and how they've changed their business model. And I don't think it's fair to try to you know, cast that opinion across all consoles, because it's not something that's done across all consoles.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, B. And um, it's interesting. Like, you talked about, like, putting their games everywhere, and, like, now what does that mean for the console? It means, like, you don't need it, right? It becomes irrelevant. That's one of the things Laura Fryer talked about. Like, if everything's an Xbox and nothing's an Xbox,
Right.
and basically what she's saying is it's diluting the brand.
Exactly.
And to me, they're a third party platform agnostic publisher in the same vein as EA and Ubisoft. And again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's not, to your point, it's not the Xbox that I fell in love with. And often when I say that, it's people or times are changing. Well, are they? Because Nintendo and PlayStation aren't necessarily changing with the quote unquote times. Or I think what this is a product of it, to your point, B, is just them doing that 180, right, to increase revenue and make the business more profitable. And you're right, like it's totally fine for them to do that. They have to answer to shareholders. They have a business to run. I get that, but I mean, B, you remember, like,
but
yeah, go ahead.
The reason that they had to change that business model is because they tried to grow too quick. When they first were making some studio purchases, and they bought a couple of studios here and there, and then they ended up buying Bethesda, and they bought a few more. They never let that actually play out before they went and swung big to get Activision. So we never got to see any of those games from those studios that they purchased. Some of those studios we're still waiting on games from. You know what I mean? So, like, we never really got to see the vision of them purchasing those studios, kind of building out their portfolio and offering some exclusive games to attract people to the console. Once they made that big purchase and it was official, and Activision and Blizzard went under that umbrella, they incurred a lot of costs that they probably weren't realizing. One of the things that I mentioned when they were making a purchase is that you have to pay for making Call of Duty now. It's not just 3 studios that you pay to make that game. There's multiple studios that you pay to create that game. That game comes out yearly. So it's a ever evolving cycle of people working on that franchise. And now you have to hope that it sells, and you're putting it on a service where you're basically giving it to people for free. So that totally changed their business model, and that's the reason why that they've kind of made this big 180, where now everything has to go everywhere, because the Game Pass model would not work with releasing these big games, because people, they would just play them in Game Pass, and we saw the increase to Game Pass pricing. Because the math doesn't math. You cannot release a bunch of AAA games, 4, 5, 6 AAA games a year in a service like that, and think that you're going to get the same revenue you would if you sold those games. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, B. It's something that like Bobby Kotick's touched upon. Strauss Zelnick from Take-Two's talked about.
That's my guy,
like,
man. I love
Strauss is, look, keep it a buck with you here, B. Microsoft should ouster Phil Spencer and hire Strauss Zelnick.
It'd be a good move. It'd be a good move.
Strauss should be heading up Xbox. No, but Strauss has talked about it. Like it doesn't make sense financially to release a big AAA game day and date in a subscription service. It just doesn't. Strauss talked about it. Bobby Kotick's talked about it. Sean Layden's talked about it. And again, that's not. You say these things, people get upset. Like, oh, you just hate on Xbox Game Pass. No, I mean, there's two things can be true. You can enjoy Xbox Game Pass, but you can also understand the economic realities and the impact of Game Pass to AAA games, right?
Right.
And again, it doesn't mean the service sucks. It just means that it makes it challenging to release big AAA games day and date, right? Like it presents a challenge, and Zelnick's talked about it. Now, Zelnick's also said, yeah, it makes more sense, after the fact, after you've released it, you've made money, and now you put it in the service, right?
Right.
So, but there's an article I was reading, B, and I got to be honest with you, B, like that is where I remember, like, when people were like, I had someone say to me, why do you care that Halo's on PlayStation? I'm like, what do you mean, why do I care? and this is where the people don't understand, like, exclusivity, like, and again, I'm never going to argue that everyone subscribes to Netflix for Stranger Things, right? But people do, B.
Right.
People do for Stranger Things. Why does Netflix invest time and money into creating exclusive content on their platform? Like, help me understand this, B. We never had this argument. I said this earlier in the show. We never had this argument about exclusivity, except for video games, with other entertainment mediums, like subscription services, like Netflix, like HBO Max.
Yeah,
we don't do it.
Yeah. Why are there so many subscription services for entertainment? Well, why aren't they all just one big app where we can get everything? Because exclusives matter. That's why.
Yeah. Like
you want to watch The Wire? Guess what? You got to go to HBO Max. You want to watch any of the DC content? You got to go to HBO Max. If you want to watch Stranger Things, you got to go to Netflix. If you don't have live TV and you want to catch up on episodes, guess what? You got to get Hulu. That's just how it works, man. Exclusive content will always drive people to be subscribers. That's just a fact.
Yeah, and it also creates especially in the day and age of ecosystems, it creates that retention, right?
Right.
For some people. And this is where I don't agree with Paris. Like he says, and I said this earlier, like, just curious to get your thoughts on his statement here. And this is just based off an article by Xbox Era. The biggest games are everywhere, and the only thing Xbox has abandoned is the illusion that exclusivity, withholding content creates value. Like, what? Like, no, it certainly creates value for consumers. Not all consumers, but It does for some consumers. It isn't a net zero proposition. Like, it isn't a net zero impact, right? Like, again, we don't say this about Stranger Things. We don't say this about The Wire. By the way, be a great show. Filmed in my backyard, not technically my backyard, but 45 minutes north from me in Baltimore. Actually, I was living in Baltimore at the time, in the city, when they were filming The Wire. But yeah, we don't say that about HBO Max or Disney Plus,
right?
Do we? Like, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, part of a statement is true. I mean, some of the biggest games are everywhere. But when you look at Sakana's numbers, there are exclusive games that are on the top 20 games of the year. So yeah,
I mean, we have Ghost of Yote right now,
right?
Which is the 10th best selling game of 2025. So if what Pear's saying is true, the data is saying something completely different. Because if that game wouldn't be the top, the 10th best selling game of 2025. On a single platform, if consumers didn't value that.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is Doom the Dark Ages on that list?
No.
Is that game everywhere?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Ghost of Yote, a game that's on one platform, beat a game that's everywhere. A AAA
Yeah.
game that's everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's several AAA games that Ghost of Yote, and not just, people always like to, and I know why they do it. Let's focus on PlayStation. Let's talk about Nintendo, right? Oh, every people argue Nintendo's different. No, Nintendo is still a video game company. They make hardware.
Right.
They're selling you an ecosystem. Nintendo, and I said this earlier in the show, Nintendo's not telling you that exclusives are the way or the future. Microsoft's telling you that, the walls of exclusivity are antiquated, right? Like, but neither PlayStation nor Nintendo are telling you that exclusives are the way. What they do is, hey, this is our box. These are the games we have. This is our ecosystem. It costs this much. If you want to buy it, buy it. If you don't, go somewhere else.
Right.
And the consumer market, right? We always say, like, the consumer market will say yes or no. The consumer market's saying yes, and the consumer market is saying yes to exclusives, based on, like, the example you just gave with Ghost of Yote.
Right.
Now, I got to pull the thread on Doom, the last Doom game. I don't know if I'd have to go back and look if it's charted in previous Arcanas. I don't think, though, it is in the, like, top 20 best-selling games of 2025. But outside of that, to your point, though, they are games that are multi-plats that aren't, charting the way that Nintendo first-party exclusives chart or some of PlayStation exclusives chart.
Right.
So, yeah, to your point, though, but that kind of reinforces that, people clearly do find value in those games because we are seeing them chart. We are seeing them being part of, top selling, games for the year 2025, amidst, like, an abundance of third-party releases that are everywhere.
Right. Right. Because I mean, if we just go, other third-party games, like some of the biggest games, well, games that you would probably consider big, like Chronos, that game didn't chart. You know what I mean? Like there's big games this year that, which is a totally different subject. But there's too many games. But there's big games that are released this year that aren't in the top 20. You know what I mean? And those games are released everywhere. So when you have a game that's released on one platform and it's charting, that means that exclusive content mattered to the people on that platform.
Now, I will say this, though, B. I mean, I think there's one criticism I've seen out there about, with regards to PlayStation's first party output, that it's been less than the PlayStation 4. I think that's a fair criticism. I know part of that is because of the misstep in pursuing live service.
I don't know if it was a misstep, though. See, a lot of people keep saying that it was a misstep. I don't think it was a misstep. Yeah, the games that they chose didn't pan out, but I think they were heading in the right direction. At the end of the day, like, they need to have some live service games. If we just look at what if we look at what Microsoft has done with their live service content, if they didn't have that, they would be in serious trouble. If they didn't have Minecraft, if they didn't have Sea of Thieves, if they didn't have Grounded, they would be in serious trouble. Those are games that retain a large player pool on a daily basis. Those games bring in a lot of revenue. If they didn't have those games, they would be in serious trouble. Now, the one thing that PlayStation does great is they have great single player games, and that's cool. You purchase the game one time. In most cases, there's not really any DLC content. You enjoy the game. It's highly rated. You move on to the next one. But they need that recurring revenue, and Marathon seems to have some sort of a bounce back. We'll see what it does in March. But they need to have those live service games. They need to have like a 60-30 split where they have single player games, but 30% of their games need to be live service games, and they need to be good live service games that can kind of help hold up some of that recurring revenue for them. If you look at MLB The Show, it charts every single year, and that's a game that is now on multiple platforms. It's on Xbox, it's on the Switch, And I believe they just released a mobile version of the game as well. So or they're about to. They need that recurring revenue. People buy those MLB packs all year round. You know what I mean? So that recurring revenue is a big boost to their overall revenue for throughout the year. So they need to continue to pursue that, and that would only help them further down the line.
Yeah, no, I understand that point, B. I think where I say it's a miss is because they had some of their first party studios like Naughty Dog, like Sony, like Ben Studios. I forget the other ones working on these games that ended up being canceled. And the reason why I say it's a miss is because it's a misstep is because I do think that could have been energy spent on creating first party games. Now, apparently, I think Ben is still working on are they still working on a live service game, maybe something else?
I don't think they're doing a live service game.
Okay, I know they're working on something else. I thought it might have been, yeah. You know what? Slow-Mo's in the live chat. Big shout out to Slow-Mo. Happy holidays, Slow-Mo. Great to see you in the live chat. I'd love to get Slow-Mo on to discuss Bungie because I have some thoughts about Marathon. Slow-Mo, you got to let me know when you're available because I really want to pick your brain about Bungie and Marathon. I was talking to Ibarra about Bungie, and he kind of thinks it was a knee-jerk. I have to go back and look at my DMs, but he thinks it was kind of more of a knee-jerk reaction to some of Microsoft's acquisitions, and doesn't necessarily agree with Sony acquiring Bungie. But Slomo says Microsoft also told their investors they need to quadruple down on AI. Now, after laying off a significant portion of their workforce, they're scrambling to get Copilot anywhere near Google's AI. I really haven't been following Microsoft's AI ambitions recently, but Microsoft says they want you to believe not what it actually is. Microsoft says they want you. I don't know. I guess that's an AI reference. And then Slomo says pursuing live service wasn't a misstep. And then Slomo gives reasons why here.
Yeah, good brother Slomo, man. We on the same page. That's my guy right there, man.
Yeah. All right, Slomo, we got to get. I really want to pick your brain about Bungie and Marathon. Okay, here we go. Slomo says roughly 50% of their annual revenue goes to live service games. They're only getting 30% of that revenue because they didn't develop it. Yeah, I don't disagree. Like, yeah, if you want to get more of that cut, right, then now that 30 turns into 100, right? And now you're able to, kind of capitalize, like you said, B, on that reoccurring revenue, get a bigger piece of that. I certainly understand that. But I don't know. Like I always feel like Marathon needs to hit for them. B. Marathon needs to hit, and I don't know.
But Marathon can come out and do the same numbers that what's the other game that's out right now?
Are you talking about Arc Raiders?
Arc Raiders, yeah. If it does similar numbers or slightly below that, I think they're good with that. As long as it stays consistent, where they got 200,000 players, I think they'll be good with that. I think they can, capitalize on that, bring in some recurring revenue with the skins and whatnot. I think they'll be good with that. I don't think it needs to be a game that sells 20 million copies or anything like that. But if they get around 8-9 million copies sold, or even a little bit above that, I think they'll be good with that. And then they can kind of focus on maintaining the game and then start working on something else.
Yeah, like I don't think it needs to be as big as like Destiny. Although I think there's rumors of them working on Destiny 3. Yeah, I don't disagree. Like maybe Arc Raiders, maybe if it's I don't know. Let's see, Slimo's saying here. If Marathon's PvP is better than what you get in Arc Raiders, they might have a minor chance to maintain a consistent community. Yeah, it's a great point, Slimo. Yeah, like I said, Slimo, we gotta figure out when we can have you on because I really do want to pick your brain on Bungie Marathon, and B, if you're available too, love to have you on, kind of discuss, Marathon and and Bungie because obviously there's been some internal issues with Bungie, right? So, but I don't know. Like, I don't look. I'm not really big into extraction shooters. B. I am playing Arc Raiders. Um, I don't know. Like I don't know if it's I don't know what keeps me going back to I guess for me, B, it's like I think the one thing keeps me going back to Arc Raiders is that it's kind of like getting that perfect run, you know? All
Yeah.
right, let me get a run. Let me get out there safe. Let me get out there without, having to, um, grief anyone or being griefed myself by, by another, another player. Um, I think that's part of it. Why I keep going back to it. Although I actually put it down for some to play play Red Dead Redemption on PlayStation 5. But yeah, I don't know. Like I think Marathon for me, I think the visual aesthetic isn't really appealing to me. And that's probably why I'm poo-pooing it a little bit.
No, I think it looks amazing, man. I like
You
the
do like I just
I like that
I just think you
futuristic look,
do.
man. It gives it's something totally different that hitting the market. It's not this post-apocalyptic, survival, like where all this
Yeah.
raggedy junk. You know what I mean? It's not a PUBG looking game. Like I like the aesthetic
Not
of it.
walking around not walking around with a frying pan in your
Yeah,
hand.
no frying pans, no fucking spatulas. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what makes it kind of appealing to a lot of people is that it's a totally different art direction, and it doesn't look like anything that's currently on the market. I mean, the closest thing would probably be some characters from Apex, but even then, it's a little bit further beyond that.
Yeah. I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. I don't yeah, like I don't know. I mean, I'll probably give it a shot because it's Bungie,
Yeah,
and I'm just curious to see what Bungie's newest creation is, outside because I mean this is what their first thing since Destiny. So, I'll probably give it a shot and kind of see yeah, more so out of curiosity, right? Research, if you will.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I don't know.
I
Yeah, go
think
ahead.
if they would have stayed the course and just released a bunch of single player games, I think they would have been in trouble. Like if let's just say Naughty Dog released uh Intergalactic was the first game they released this generation, and that's a $400 million game. So then the next game that they do is a $500 million game. And people forget that like Naughty Dog kind of has a little bit of a stain on them. You know what I mean? Like people don't really like what they do in their games politically. You know what I mean? So like what they did in The Last of Us 2 kind of put like a little stain or a little black eye on the studio as far as like the consumer perception. And then once they reveal Intergalactic and it's this female with a shaved head, and people are like, "Yo, I'm not messing with that." You know what I mean? So when you start to invest in these games and they're 3, 4, $500 million, and that return on investment might not come right away, that could be a bigger hindrance than canceling some of these multiplayer games that might only cost you $150 million to get off the ground.
So you think that so the reoccurring revenue from these live service games will help kind of facilitate some of the development to like a Naughty Dog, right? And
Exactly.
kind of ease some of that burden. Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I think that's part of the thought process, right?
Right.
Because we know that like that we know that the funding to the studios comes from like the general pot, if you will,
Right.
right? And Sony's the one allocating, the budgets and things like that, and whatever the money, right, from that greater pot. So yeah, so I don't disagree. I just think I don't know, like I don't know. I have this thing with live service. I just feel like it's a saturated market, and it's tough to get your some footing in. And I'm not saying that like a live service game needs to be in order to be successful needs to be at the same breadth or scope as like a Fortnite. Maybe to your point, like you said earlier, maybe if it does something like Arc Raiders that has some consistency. I mean, even Sea of Thieves, isn't doing like Fortnite or Minecraft numbers, right?
Right.
But it actually has a good community, has a good footing.
Right.
You
don't keep releasing DLC for a game that nobody's playing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And Sea of Thieves has done very well in that regard for Microsoft.
Right.
So maybe if Sony's able to replicate maybe some of that, success. A couple Sea of Thieves, if you will, or even Grounded. You're right. Like Grounded doesn't get a sequel or DLC unless there's a community there.
Right.
Like I like we said this on the show. If if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, they're not going to do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. But then I guess like, do they need to? Let me ask you a question, Pete. Do they need to invest in other studios that can solely focus on live service?
Uh, I don't know if they need to do that. I mean, I think they've created a few that they've announced that we haven't seen their games yet. So I mean they have some studios that are kind of dedicated to that. We just kind of have to see where they go with it. We have to see the reemergence of Fair Games and what that's going to be. So I think they have 4 or 5 in a tuck that haven't been officially announced, but they've announced the studios that are working on them. But I just think when you go through a transition of going from one CEO to another, that just takes time. And I mean, like when you change the whole focus of a company, it takes time for everyone to adjust. And we kind of saw that when Phil took over Xbox. You know what I mean? When he took it from damn, I can't think of his name. When he took it from
Donnie D.
Yeah, Donnie D. When he took it from Donnie Matrick, I mean, it took time for Xbox to kind of get back on the rails and kind of feel like Xbox again. You know what I mean? So once you change CEOs and you change philosophies, it just takes time. And what Hiroki Totoki's doing and kind of refocusing on Japan, I think that's a good move. I think them doubling down on the China Hero project and those different initiatives over there, that's also a good move. You know what I mean? Trying to gain footing more on a global stance. That's what they should be doing. And I think they're making all the right moves. Now we just have to see over these next few years, what their games are looking like. I think the one thing that they do need to do is probably move on from the guy that's in charge of PlayStation as far as the gaming side, which is I can't think of his name.
You talking about Herman Holst?
Yeah, they got to get Herman the hell up out of there, bro.
Why? I thought Herman Holst was your guy. No,
he is my guy, man. I liked him over at Gorilla, but him heading PlayStation, yo, he got to get out of there, bro. He's making all the wrong decisions, bro.
What do you think? What do you think what decisions do you think he's making that are
the game selections are just idiotic? They make no sense. Like the game that they announced at the Game Awards, that new 4-player co-op game, absolutely trash, bro. I don't know why they tried to like pre-hype it before the show. That saying that announcing it, we got this new game that we're working on. We finally see it and it's like, yo, what is this? Like they're not making the right decisions, bro, when it comes to these first party, second party relationships. Like these games are just not good games. They don't align with what would make sense for a PlayStation. Helldivers was a flash in the pan, bro. They took a game that nobody was talking about before. They put it into a third person view, and now people started, they messed with the game. When it was a top down game, nobody was talking about Helldivers. They changed the perspective of the game, and it blew up. But when you start looking at some of the stuff that they've announced over the last 2-3 years, it's like, yo, what is this stuff? Like this is not aligned with what you expect from PlayStation, and he got to go, man. If the next batch of games over this next year that are announced don't align with what you think from PlayStation, he's got to get out of there because he's destroying everything that has been built up from the PS4 generation up until now.
Wow. So what games have you been, like you say game announcements, like what game announcements have you been disappointed by from PlayStation?
Just about every one of them, to be totally honest. That isn't like from a a main studio. Like if it's
Oh,
not
okay. I see what
from
you're saying. Yeah. Yeah.
if it's not from like Insomniac, or if it's not from
Yeah.
some of the in-house studios, like all these partnership games that they've announced, there's they're terrible games, bro. Terrible.
Yeah.
None
We're
none
not
none,
getting,
none of
the
them look good.
Bloodborns. Yeah. We're
Yeah,
not getting like the Bloodborns. And yeah, I mean, that's, look, that I don't totally disagree, B. I think obviously the first party stuff has been like solid, but like, I don't totally disagree with like some of the third party or second party exclusives.
yeah. Because I
Um,
mean, what would you say would be a notable third-party exclusive for this generation? And that's come out in the last 2 years.
I think, I mean, I would have said Returnal, but then they bought Housemark.
Right.
Um, so now Housemark's a first party studio. But yeah, they haven't had like, they had, big shout out to T Rocks in the live chat. They haven't had the, I mean, like Final Fantasy, I think Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. The Final Fantasy 7 remakes, that's probably the big notable one. Final Fantasy 16. That's the only three that come to mind. Stellar Blade. Yeah, someone just mentioned Stellar Blade. We're going to see how, some of the China Hero projects stuff like Phantom Blade Zero, see how that pans out.
Yeah, because even like we waited so long for Lost Soul Aside, the
I mean,
game came out.
Wukong,
Game came out,
Black
fell
Myth,
on his face.
Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah, I mean you could count that, I guess, but it
I mean, it's,
technically wasn't it wasn't like a branded exclusive. It wasn't like something they threw their name on and said like, "Yo."
yeah, no, I don't disagree. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like when you look at a game like Foam Stars, terrible. You know what I
Oh
mean? Like
man,
they
no,
made like
not Foam Stars.
they
Foam
made
Stars are
some
terrible.
horrible decisions. You know what I mean? It's just like, yo, what is going on? Like, yeah, Stellar Blade was a good one. I'll give you that. But like the Final Fantasy stuff, that's stuff that, I mean, that contract was from PS4 generation. So it's just like, okay, I'll give you that. You know what I mean? We finally get it, towards the beginning of this gen. But like there's not that many, like when you think of PlayStation, you know what I mean? You always think of like, yeah, we're gonna get some dope first party stuff. But that second and third party, like the exclusive stuff, that's gonna be right on par. You know what I mean? It's gonna feel like everything is all in, it's all together. You know what I mean? It's gonna feel like it's all under the same umbrella. It's gonna feel like it's all from the same family. And you just can't say that today. You know what I mean? There's not many exclusive games where you can be like, yeah, this makes sense for PlayStation. And I think they got away from that. I think they started to feel themselves a little too much. I think they worried about what Microsoft was doing.
What about Silent Hill?
I mean,
I think what B's getting at, by the way, is not games that are timed exclusives per se, but games that are like second party, like like what we talked about.
Yeah.
We mentioned like second party exclusive deals, right? Like when you think about like Gravity Rush or Blood Boy is probably the best example I can think of.
Yeah, I mean when you start to go down the line of great PS4 games, there's a lot of games that were made by other teams that were just exclusive. You know what I mean? They went and bought the exclusivity for the game, or they did a partnership with the game. Now, like I said, we do have a new CEO. We do have a new direction. So I mean, we are getting a Marvel Token next year, which is like a partnership game with between Sony and my great guys over there. So I mean, we are getting some of those, but like I said, we got to see what it looks like over the next 2 or 3 years. Over the next year, like this next, big PlayStation event, whether it's a showcase or whatever, like they need to show that there's some really big things coming to PlayStation. Otherwise, you know what I mean, them saying that there's only gonna be one or two big exclusives a year, that's not gonna work.
So yeah, no, you're not the only one that's voiced that criticism. I've heard, and this is one thing I'll say I appreciate about the PlayStation community. They will take PlayStation to task, and that is one of the complaints that I've heard from the play or that I've read on from the PlayStation community and on PlayStation centric podcasts. Right, that they haven't released as many exclusives as they have in previous years. And so, if you look at like, the PS4 generation, the PS3 generation, I mean, like, I don't totally disagree with you, B. I like one of the things I liked about the PS4 is like in between those tentpole franchises, right? We had, some of those second party, third party exclusive deals or exclusive games that were pretty much tied to PlayStation, weren't being released on other platforms.
Right.
Now some of that's happening, but some of it is more, timed exclusivity, where it's, hey, you know what, we're going to have this game for 3 months and then it's going to go elsewhere, or a year. You see that with Black Myth Wukong, but I guess the other thing I was going to ask you, you talked about the refocusing to Japan, B. And, do you think that is more, I think I look at that as more just promoting more like diversity amongst its development, or, like kind of like what we saw with, I always think of Gravity Rush, and some of the, what was the Japanese studio they closed?
That was Japan Studio.
It was Japan Studio. Thank you.
Yeah.
and a lot of PlayStation fans were upset about that. So do you think that's part of kind of that refocus on Japan, maybe kind of that course correction? Maybe they were focused too much on the West, and now refocusing kind of Japan is more that addressing some of that development diversity. Although I think they're doing that a bit with the China Hero Project.
Yeah, I mean, I think they need to refocus and kind of readjust, but I also think they just need to recapture that fan base. Because I mean, and when you look at Japan, it's totally a handheld market, and we know that PlayStation is going to release a handheld, within the next generation. So I think them just trying to reestablish that fan base, and kind of get them prepared, for the new hardware coming down the line, is what they're attempting to do here. So hopefully that plan works out for them. But I think it's important. I mean, you can't be a Japanese company and not really have too many ties to Japanese developers and teams over there. And they should be the ones that are kind of discovering the next big Japanese team, and kind of putting them on a platform and allowing some of those relationships to blossom over time. So I mean, they're definitely doing it with the China Hero Project. A lot of games over there look somewhat promising. We kind of see what happens, as time goes on. But I think it's smart, and I think it's important for them to kind of reestablish the base over in Japan.
Yeah, they kind of almost ceded Japan to Nintendo.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. That they, and I think as a Japanese company, it's probably culturally important for them to have some presence or some diversity or cultural relevance in Japan, right? As opposed to solely focusing on the West. I've always thought like one of the things I liked about the PlayStation 4 generation, and much like the 360 generation, it was the place where everything existed, right?
Right.
Whether it was developers from the East, developers from the West. It almost feels, to your point, and I didn't think about this before you brought it up. It almost does feel like it's more focused on the West, and not that they don't have any. I know, like they still look. Obviously, they still get more Japanese developer support than Xbox does. Although I think Xbox has done. Has made some really good inroads in getting some of the more popular Japanese developers or games on
because Sony took their eye off of Sega. Sony took their eye off of Square Enix. And Microsoft was able to court them, and they Microsoft will parade them around as much as they can. You know, having some of those big Square Enix games, some of those big Sega games on your platform, that's a major boost, you know, to the platform. And PlayStation used to have a lot of those games as exclusive content, and them taking eye off the ball, that really cost them down the line, because Yakuza blew up after, you know what I mean, it was on Game Pass, and you know, more people got their eyes on it. It became a much bigger franchise.
Yeah, you know, I always said it was a big deal, and I think part of the frustration I had with some of the Xbox fans is when Dragon Quest 11 released on Game Pass. I'm like, you guys need to go out and support this game on Game Pass. Like, I don't like, culturally speaking, I don't think they people really appreciate or knew the significance of getting a Dragon Quest game on Xbox was at that time.
Right.
Like Dragon Quest, for those who don't remember, I know you do, B, but remember there was SquareSoft, and then there was Enix,
Right.
and in Japan it was kind of like, you know, it was it was Final Fantasy versus Dragon Quest, you know, and Dragon Quest is an iconic Japanese RPG franchise, and Dragon Quest 11 is a really great game, and so that was a big get. And then you think about the Persona games,
Right.
you know, those are big gets. You know, and granted, like PlayStation definitely gets some of the more obscure, you know, Japanese titles, you know, on PlayStation 5 that the Xbox doesn't get. But there was a time, to your point, I think, where some of those mainstream or larger Japanese franchises probably wouldn't have seen the light of day on Xbox. They would have primarily been on PlayStation. You know.
Yeah, most definitely. And like I said, I think PlayStation was feeling themselves too much, and they took those relationships for granted. And you know, they were able to be courted by Xbox, and you know, become more platform agnostic.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone, like, I guess Chris doesn't agree with you, B. He says Yakuza didn't blow up because of Game Pass. The game was a seller and no franchise before Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, of course it was, but it became a bigger franchise. I mean, Sega said that once it released on Xbox.
Yeah, like Sega. I do remember Sega saying that they the popularity of the franchise actually increased as a result of going to Game Pass. You know, and that's one of the examples of. And look, we always have this argument about Game Pass. Yeah, like, does it work for every publisher or developer? No, but it does work for some.
Right.
In this case, you know, Yakuza would be an example of it working. Game Pass working. Yeah. I'm sorry, B. I'm reading the chat here. Oh, people are really upset about that, B. Look, B's not saying that it wasn't big already. He's saying that it helped.
Right.
You know, that it brought more people to it. You know, so I do want to read something here real quick. B, kind of pivot here. We got to get you back on. I want to pull the thread on the PlayStation conversation a bit more, because we don't. You know, we've you know, I've raised some concerns about PlayStation kind of being on its own right now in that high end console space. You know, now that Xbox is kind of bowed out. Like, I don't know how I feel about that, but I think that's another conversation. But definitely want to get you back on, B, because I do have some concerns. I've often thought that they really haven't had their foot on the pedal as much as they did the PS4 generation. And not that they haven't released good titles, because they have, but in comparison to like the PS4 gen and the end of the PS3 gen, I think that's an interesting conversation to have.
Yeah, for sure. But I always caution people. I mean, it's kind of weird, because like this gen had a lot of crossover, and this is something that we really haven't seen in prior generations before. But like, PlayStation's best days are always at the end of the generation. They always start off the generation slow, and like this generation, like I said, is weird because we had so many crossover games where we had, you know, the God of Wars, we had the Horizons. Like, a lot of those early games in the first 2 or 3 years were games that released on both platforms. You know what I mean? So like if we take those away from, let's just say those games don't release on PS4 and they release on PS5, like the PS5 library is massively increased. Those games are probably looked at totally different. Um, but I mean that just wasn't the case. That's not how it went. We had those games released on both platforms. A lot of people consider those games PS4 games with PS5 boost or whatever the case may be,
Yeah.
upres. So a lot of people don't feel like the generation has really even started because we had that crossover. And this is something I mentioned before. Like once the consoles went to x86, like we have to look at these consoles like a PC. You know what I mean? Like going from a PS4 to PS5 to PS6 is basically going from a 2070, 3070, 4070. You know what I mean? Like what you're really getting is just a increase in visuals, an increase in performance. You may get a few exclusive games here and there, but people should expect, even in the PS6 generation, that there will be a large portion of games that release on both the PS5 and the PS6. Don't go into the PS6 generation thinking that we're starting at day one. There's going to be this massive library of PS6 games, and they're only going to be on PS6, because that is not how it's going to happen. So, I mean, this generation across the line has just looked at totally different, because this is the first time where we had like this cross-gen thing happen, where a lot of games have released the first 3 years on both consoles. And we even see in the last few showcases, there's games that are still going to release on PS4 in 2026, which is insane. So, you know what I mean? Like this cross-gen thing will definitely make people look at generations totally different, because like the libraries are not going to be looked at the same. Like you can't look at a PS4 library and a PS5 library and, you know, look at it with the same eye, because a lot of the games are crossover games. And it's you know, it is what it is. Like you can't really do much about it, because that's just, it makes the most economic sense. Like these companies are for-profit businesses. They are trying to drive sales. The number has to go up every year. When it doesn't, you know what I mean, there's big changes to the company. You know what I mean? Like so there's reasons for them doing it on the business side, but as a consumer, of course, we all look at it kind of different and wish that it was, you know, the generations were like they've always been, you know, the past 6 generations that we've had consoles.
Yeah. And that's something PlayStation has to contend with now. Like that's not something they had to contend with going from PS3 to PS4.
Right.
Where they're gonna have to contend, like to your point about x86, they're gonna have to contend with that now. I think Colin Moriarty actually brought that point up too. That's going to be new. This is new water for them to navigate, right? Like they are now, you know, looking at cross gen stuff, and maybe with the PS6, it's cross gen at the start, and maybe more exclusivity for PS6 at the latter part of the generation once you get more of that install base, you know, maybe right.
Right.
And when you're selling, you know, a cross-gen exclusive, to your point, like you're getting that PS5 boost, and that's the selling point, as opposed to just, oh, you can only play it here, right? Because there's something to be said. There's certainly some value in that performance boost for some consumers. Others are going to be like, no, I can play it on PS4, and I'm content doing so. And others are going to say, no, I want the early adopters. No, I want the PS5 because I want to get the best, you know, the best version or the best experience of that particular software title out. You know,
Right.
Yeah, I want to we'll go back to this article real quick. This is the Xbox Air article. One thing I didn't this part here, I'd argue Xbox hasn't abandoned the brand or its players. I think it's abandoned the console brand. I think for a subset of consumers, it's abandoned. Like it's certainly abandoned a subset of its players. The biggest games are everywhere, and the only thing Xbox has abandoned is the illusion that exclusivity, withholding content, creates value. I don't agree with that. That there's some kind of illusion, and I just wanted to address it because this goes back to that kind of data point that we talked about. If you look at the Circana numbers, you look at like a Ghost of Yote, you know, being the top 10 best selling games of 2025. Like that means something, right? And I think it speaks in contrary to what the statement here says about, the illusion that exclusivity creates value. All right. Well, B, look, man, we got to get you back on again. I know you're busy with sports. I get it. Family. But we got to get you back on to talk, because I really want to pull this thread more on PlayStation.
Yeah, yeah. I think PlayStation needs a deep dive where people are actually gonna talk about it, and it's fair on this and it's on a fair point. You know what I mean? Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people are either gonna glaze PlayStation or double down on it being the worst thing in the industry. So, I'm always give it to you how I see it, and I'm always down to do that. So hopefully we can make time for it pretty soon, because I would love to have that discussion, man.
Yeah, let me know, man. I don't know if you're around. I mean, I'm going to do another BRAP next week. I'm off next week, so I don't know if you're around. I may go live like either Tuesday night or maybe Wednesday during the day. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But let's connect in the DMs and figure out, like, what your schedule is next week, man. Because I'm glad you brought this up with PlayStation, because it's not. I mean, I've seen some PlayStation content creators bring this up. I know Colin's talked a little bit about some of the challenges with PlayStation. Look, like, no, I'm not buying Battlefield 6. Let me grab the super chat by T Rock. T Rock with the $2 super chat. Brett, buy Battlefield 6 already. I'm not doing that. I just don't have any interest in it. No, man, I can't do all the planes flying into you. I can't deal with that. That's just not for me, B. I can't do that.
Oh man. Oh, BS6 is so fun, man.
My 11-year-old has been bugging me to buy Battlefield 6. He wants to play it. He plays the battle royale version.
Oh, the Red Sec?
Red Sec. Yeah, I played it like once or twice. I don't know. I don't know if, like, that's just, to me, that's just such a time suck. I don't know if I want to get back into those types of games right now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I haven't played it that much just because I have so much other stuff going on. But when I do hop on there, it's always a good time.
I can't do the conquest stuff though, with all the planes and tanks. I can't deal with that.
Yeah.
That's just too much noise. Oh wow. T-Rex says, not T-Rex. Slow-Mo says Battlefield 6 has lost 80% of its players on Steam. Wow.
Yeah, I believe it.
Slow-Mo says, join me on COD. I don't even know if I want to get down with COD. And Slow-Mo, I definitely don't want to get in a COD match with you, because anytime I jump into a match with Slow-Mo, it's like you're playing against like the sweaties. It's brutal. It is brutal. Although I wouldn't mind getting back into Halo Infinite.
Yeah, we could run a little Halo, man.
Yeah, I know Logic was playing a couple weeks ago. But I wouldn't mind, I wouldn't mind doing that. What else? Oh, T-Rock says soft because I'm not buying Battlefield 6. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't have any interest, T-Rock, right now. There's just so many other stuff that I want to play. I mean, I'm playing like I said, I'm playing Red Dead Redemption right now. It's been like, 15, 16 years. No. 14 or 15 years.
How's it running with the update?
I think it looks pretty good for a game that's, 15 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it actually doesn't look bad. Okay. And I'm running it on PS5 Pro right now.
Yeah.
So, I do think though that looking back, damn, Slow-Mo says there's nothing but sweats in Halo Infinite.
No,
Is that bad?
I believe it. The casuals are gone away from that.
Slow-Mo says, and COD has opened up skill-based matchmaking a bit. I don't know, Slow-Mo. I have you been playing with Logic, Slow-Mo? I know he's on there. I don't know if maybe I'll hop on. I don't know. I mean, I have Game Pass. I can download it on Game Pass. Play it on my PC. I don't know. BRAP, T-Rex says, BRAP, you play Red Dead Redemption 2. I have 1,900 hours. Jesus. You have 1,900 hours in Red Dead Redemption 2? That's a lot. What did you do, T-Rock? How That's crazy. All right, B. Well, look, man, it's always a pleasure having you on. Seriously, let's figure out a time we can get you back on, because I definitely want to pull this thread on PlayStation. I think it's a good conversation to have. Um, also want to talk maybe, but hopefully maybe we can coordinate a time to get Slow Mo on as well, because I definitely want to talk about Forte is a band. Slow Mo. Let me pull this up here. Slow Mo has been playing a lot with Taz. Forte has abandoned me. Forte has abandoned everyone. I haven't seen or heard from Forte in months. I have no idea where he is. I happen to like catch him on Iron Lords every once in a while, but outside of that, he is like MIA. So big shout out to Gaming Forte. But yeah, no, I mean, definitely want to, figure out a time to get you and Slim on together, because I outside of the PlayStation thing, I do want to pull the third also on on Marathon and Bungie.
Yeah.
So Forte has played 5 games of Battlefield 7. Wow. 5? That's it? Oh yeah, he's off the reservation. I don't know where he is. Interesting. B Money Logic was telling me that he popped a rare achievement for Prestige in Black Ops 7. He said that on Xbox, it's like 30% of people have popped that achievement.
Yeah, I mean, you also got to think there's probably a huge amount of people who are just playing on Game Pass, checked out the campaign, and got out of there. You know what I mean? Like, there's that number is probably super skewed just because there's so many people who can access the game, and not really care about even playing it at all, to be totally honest.
Yeah, someone just said I just went up to Prestige 4 this morning. Yeah, someone says I just went up to Prestige 4 this morning. Wow, Slow-Mo's putting in that work.
Yeah, well, Black Call of Duty, that's Slow-Mo's kind of game, man. And anything with a gun, man, you're gonna find Slow-Mo there.
Exactly. Playing at all hours of the day, 4 a.m. Drinking his Red Bull. Slow-Mo, do you sleep? Are you still sleep deprived, sir? All right, B. Well, look, thank you again for joining. I really appreciate it. Always great having you on, man.
Yes, sir.
Always
man.
A great conversation.
Yeah. Just happened to be scrolling on the good old Twitter, man. I saw your post, and I was like, oh yeah, let me hop in there, man. It's been a while, man. Luckily, it's a Sunday, man. I don't got too much going on today. But
yeah, no, I hear you, man. I know it's busy with sports.
Yeah, man. Always something, man. Nonstop. Yeah. Always on the go. How was your son's football season, man?
Yeah. So no, thank you for asking. So I'm a little worried in the beginning. He's 7, a little worried. But he towards the latter part of the season, he got into it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, he's also, majority of the players in that team were second graders. He's in first grade. So I think there was probably like 4 first graders on that team. He's one of the 4 first graders. So they had him playing safety and linebacker. And I mean, he ended up liking it, towards the end of the season. So, he's going to play again. He'll get more playing time next fall because, he's coming back. Now he knows, right? He's quote unquote a veteran now.
Yeah.
But it's funny. He's also doing wrestling right now.
Oh yeah. That's what I like to hear.
Yeah. His football coach just recommended. Yeah. Half his football team is doing wrestling.
Yeah.
So
that's what
doing it right now.
That's what it goes to. It goes football, wrestling, track. Football, wrestling, track, man.
Yeah. So I'm trying to get my other son, my 11-year-old, who's playing travel baseball now. I'm trying to get him to play football because he would be a beast.
Yeah.
He's 11 years old. He's 5'5", 121 pounds.
Oh yeah, you gotta get him on that field, man.
He doesn't want to play. He refuses to play.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, he's athletic. Like, he just naturally athletic. Like he's playing rec basketball. We didn't put him in select basketball this year. He's playing rec, and he's head and shoulders better than anyone on that court. every
Yeah.
weekend. Although he didn't score his last game, he missed like a couple layups. He needs to work on that, but he doesn't practice basketball at all.
Yeah.
But like he does stuff like where his control, the way he controls himself, like on the like his body, he can like for a big man to spin and take fadeaway jump shots and still have control of his body. Like
Yeah.
you can't teach that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
You
good.
just
That's
can't
good
teach
stuff,
that.
man.
Yeah. So, but I mean, he's had baseball coaches who coach football tell him like, look, like you play football. I'll line you up as defensive end and you will feast. And I don't believe it. I tell him like, dude, you would go out there and cook. Like no one's going to stop you.
Yeah.
You have big hands. You're strong. Like there's kids that are his height that are like skinny, like he's skinny, but he's thick skinny, if that makes sense.
He's got a little mass to him.
Yeah, he's got mass,
Yeah.
exactly. And so like he coming off the edge, no one's gonna stop him.
Yeah.
You
got to try your hardest to get him out there, man.
Oh, I'm trying, B. I'm trying. But with travel baseball, my wife's kind of against the idea of him playing football and travel baseball. There are other kids on his travel team that played both football and travel ball during the fall.
Yeah.
And she kind of doesn't want to do it, but his first fall season in travel baseball, he killed it. Led the team in home runs, hit over 600 batting average.
Damn.
Yeah, his on base percentage was like 700, 715, 730. I mean, he was basically he was on base almost every at bat.
Yeah.
I mean, his slugging percentage. I mean, he's good. He's good. So, but yeah, I'm trying to get him to play, B. I'm trying to get him, man. Still working on it. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I'm happy the younger one's playing. Yeah. What about your boys? Are they still, one's going to college, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One is, in college. One is, this was his junior year this year. This kid is amazing, man. These companies are trying to contact him. They want to get him an NIL deal.
Already in high school?
Yeah. They just passed it this fall that high school kids can take the NIL in high school. So we're talking to companies now to
that's awesome.
Work through the deal. I got to get to the lawyer and talk numbers and all that. But yeah, like he's got every award you could think of. He was just shy of a few yards to getting Mr. Ohio.
Wow. What is he? Is he running back?
Yeah, he's a running back.
Oh, he must
running
be
back. Oh. Yeah, he was first team offense, first team defense.
All right,
he plays linebacker too.
What colleges are looking at him? I know some Big Ten schools are looking at him.
Iowa Hawkeyes, Texas is looking at him.
Wow.
Minnesota. We went down to Kentucky, Penn State.
Wow.
We're waiting on Ohio, man. We're waiting on Ohio State.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what about Ohio State? Like, if you're going to Penn State, I'm surprised Ohio State hasn't come knocking yet.
Yeah. We're waiting on Ohio State. But yeah, man, he's got schools looking at him. He can pretty much go wherever he wants to. It's
awesome.
Just a kind of decision now. So, we're continue to put film up, continue to, just reach out to recruiters and, kind of put them in front of as many eyes as possible.
Uh-huh.
And, hopefully by next spring, we'll kind of have be down to the top 10 schools and kind of narrow it down, to the end of the year and make a decision, man.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, all right, B. Well, thank you again, man, for your time. Really appreciate it. We got, again, let's coordinate, figure out a time to get you back on again soon. Get Slow-Mo on as well. And give a big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you for joining us this morning, late morning, early afternoon. Again, this is very impromptu, so really appreciate it. Do the YouTube thing, hit the like button, consider subscribing, hit the bell notification so you're alerted when we go live. We'll probably do another BRAP next week. I don't know what day yet. New Year's Eve falls on a Wednesday, which is our usual day that we go live. And we'll catch you next time. Big shout out to B Money. Big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of the holidays, and we'll see you next time.